This video continues from the previous. Okay, so one of the things you're going to want to know is how big is it? Okay, so size and area. How large is our property? In this case, right, we're this wide, we're this we're this tall, right? Our X and our Y coordinates. We multiply those out to get 1.26 acres. There's a street intersection here, and the property line has an offset of 10 feet from the road. And so we've indicated all of that. So we know how big it is. We're going to want to find out setbacks and easements, and you can get that from the county. Anytime I started a project, I called the county or went to their website and found out how far or how close to the road, to the property lines, can I build? And those are your setbacks, your easements. You may have to have 30 feet between the property line and the edge of your house. And a lot often, setbacks and easements have to do with things like utilities or sidewalks. They may later want to come in and do modifications, and they don't want to have to tear down your house to replace pipes or access utilities that are underground. They may want to come in later and put in a sidewalk, and now you have people walking right past your house. And I know you guys have seen this because there was a time when setbacks and easements were not considered the way they are now. And you'll see, especially in some urban areas, you'll wonder how people live there because the sidewalk is literally right outside their house. So that is something that is important to know because you don't want to violate that. Also, there are setbacks between properties, right? I mean, I know there are houses that are very, very close together, but some counties don't let you build that close together because of fire. And this is what will happen. If one house catches fire, there's a certain amount of distance that a fire will jump to the next house. And you'll set the whole neighborhood on fire very quickly if your property is put together too closely. Or they may mandate certain materials, like in commercial, you have to use concrete block as a firewall between properties that are close together to ensure that that fire doesn't jump. I mean, you can't ensure it, but to reduce it if it does. Where are the trees? Are you going to have to take anything out? Okay, so you see that this slide has noted oak trees and pine trees. And if you don't already know, oaks are hardwood. They call them mighty oaks because they live almost forever. They don't. They live hundreds of years. And it's really hard to knock one over. Though literally one fell not far from my house down the street not that long ago. But it just got really, really top heavy, and it was in an area of erosion, and the erosion had worn down so that the roots weren't really tight. But oak trees have very, very deep root systems. So they tend to be trees that you don't mind so much building your house under. It's very unlikely that they're going to fall. Now, a branch could fall. I mean, it happens in my yard all the time. I have these massive oaks at the front of my property, and branches will fall off. So you do have to consider that they can do damage on the way down. But pine trees, those are softwood. Oak is hardwood. Pine trees are softwood. And every one of my neighbors has had a pine tree, at least one pine tree, fall on their house. There are no pine trees around my house. So that's something to consider. You wanna make sure that if there are a lot of pine trees, that you either don't build close to them, or see if they are trees that you can remove and replace. And I'm saying this very, very definitively. If you cut down a tree, and you may need a permit, so you have to check into that. But if you cut down a tree, you want to replace it. And you want to replace it with a hardwood tree. You might have you see it says scrub growth. That would have to be removed. So these are things you need to know. These are things you need to note in your site analysis because it makes a difference. in what needs to be done. It's helping you figure out the work. Can you do a rough estimate of the contours? When you go out to the site, if you go stand at each corner and make notes, does the land slope down from where you are? Does it slope up? I couldn't do it eyeball this that well. I'm guessing they probably didn't either, but some people are that good, especially with the numbers. You can you could put in rough lines or note any features in the contours. Maybe there's a big hole here, or maybe there's a pond here. You want to note all that. You don't want to put your house over this and have the contractor come back and say, we got a pond. Do you want me to fill that in? At which point you're like, uh-oh. And so you also have to consider drainage. If this is my site, am I going to put my house right here? No. I'm not saying you couldn't do something very creative by putting it on piers, but you got two problems. This lake might rise, and now you're putting your house in a floodplain, and the insurance on that house is going to be astronomical. And then your house might flood. But also you've got all this water running down. And while it might be great to be on the lake, if you decide that's where you want your house, that's where your client wants the house, you're going to have to devise something to get it up so that you're not dealing with flooding. You want to note, if you can, the drainage. Go there on a rainy day. See what's happening when it's raining. Where does the rain drain? Where does the water drain? Because just based on this alone, you're getting a lot of drainage here. I'm not putting my house right there without serious consideration about what needs to be done to change it. Okay, man-made features. For instance, there's a wall here. There's a bridge. There's a curb. You want to know those things because we're going to have to address them or deal with them. Where are the utilities? You can get utility maps. The county carries these. It should be part of the plat that you have, which you originally have when you either purchase the property or look at the property. The county has these and will allow you to look at them. I don't know that all counties allow you to take them unless it's your property. But you can certainly look at them to see where the utilities are. The utility companies don't want you doing anything that's going to make their lives difficult, so they often will help you garner this information because they have it. They have as-builts, and an as-built means a drawing that shows things as they have been built. And so utility companies will have as-builts of where utility lines are. You can call them and say, hey, I need this information. They'll be more than happy to work with you. Where is the traffic? This is really important. Stand there and watch the traffic. Make notes about the traffic. Now, obviously, traffic is going to be different at 8 o'clock in the morning than it is going to be at 10 o'clock at night. And it's important to visit the site more than once to garner this information. Because if there's heavy traffic at 10 o'clock at night and your client has a job where they have to work early, this might not be a good fit. Or if it's no choice and you have to use this property, it gives you some things to consider. Watch where people go, especially during high traffic areas. People walk up and down the creek right next to this property. Does the property line go to or cross over? Is this a designated path? Will you need to create barriers? You want to know all this. What about wind? And you have to know that the wind in the winter and the wind in the spring are different. Where does the sun go? And this is called a sun path. Okay, so so summer solstice is when the Earth is the closest to the sun. And that occurs around June 21st every year. It shifts. Sometimes it's the 20th, sometimes it's the 22nd. But it's around the 21st of every summer. And the sun rises and then it travels through the sky. It doesn't actually, obviously. We're talking about the sun like it goes around the earth when we all know that's not how it works. But it's just the terminology we use. I always feel weird using it because I know it's not right. But so this is the path that we see that the sun takes through the sky. Let's say that. And then at high noon, this is where it usually peaks actually later. It's usually not. Okay, let's call this solar noon because that's actually what it is. Solar noon may be 1:15 in the afternoon. This is the highest point in the day. This is when the sun is the hottest. And based on where it is at that point, you're going to want to make decisions about how you orient your building. Okay? And then the sun travels and sets. And then the next morning, right, it moves between the summer and the winter solstice. It moves just a tiny little bit this direction. And its path is somewhere over here. And then the next day and the next day and the next day until now we're over here. And then eventually, right, we're rising and setting until we get to the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, which is December 21st or thereabouts. It will rise. It will travel this path. Solar noon is roughly around noon. And this is when you will get the most sun. And that's important to know, especially in a colder climate, if you want to garner the most sun. What is the culture? What's going on around here? This might require some digging and some research. What's the neighborhood like? You want to note all this down. And you see how these are on different pieces of paper? You may want to have a different piece of paper for every single one of them. And then you want to start thinking about the views. What are the views from the site? What are the views into the site? What are your neighbors going to see? You're certainly not going to want to watch them watch your clients brushing their teeth as much as you don't want your clients watching neighbors brush their teeth. It helps to take pictures or do sketches for important areas that you can't just get alone in a two-dimensional plan. What are the views to the site? Who's going to be able to see in? What do we want them to see? How are we going to resolve that? Views through the site have to do with someone standing here and they're looking through. What are they going to see beyond? And really important, what kind of noise? You want to note that. Okay, and now we're going to talk about these in just a little bit more detail and start talking about how they affect design. We're going to stop this here and continue in the next video.